Hi, guys. I hope you are well. I've been doing a lot of research this morning and doing a lot of tweeting. I'm just trying to, I don't usually spend too much time on Twitter, but I've just been trying to do my best to really kind of sound the alarm, if you will, as far as the freedoms that I think we are potentially going to lose forever. Not to sound too dramatic, but I think we're really at a crossroads right now in the West and maybe in the whole world for that matter. And I think it's, we can sit here and talk about economics and the Fed and the repo market and quantitative easing all we want. But at the end of the day, I think that's kind of focusing on your toilet being broken when your entire house is on fire. You might want to focus more so on the house being on fire and then get to the toilet. And so that's the way I look at it. But anyway, I'm trying to really kind of make sense of what's going on. So like I did a few months ago, I've been trying to really study, as you can tell by the title, I can't really be too forthright because of YouTube, but I've been studying Germany, let's call it, during the 1930s and a specific group in Germany. And what is just terrifying is how many similarities you see with what is going on today and what happened back then. So let's go into the couple of the articles or a couple of the resources I've been using to kind of learn and try to figure out exactly, to the best of my ability, what happened in the past. So understanding that history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes. I can maybe kind of figure out what's going on here in this crazy, crazy, insane world that we are living in right now. So I want to start with this just real quick article from the Khan Academy. And I actually use them for a very good resource. They're not too good on the banking system. They don't really understand money. Or the gentleman that does this, he's brilliant. Sal, I think his name is. Awesome resource. I mean, it's amazing. But I'm not going to say they're good. They're decent on banking and money and whatnot. But that's a very complex topic, so I got to cut them some slack there. But anyway, on most things, they're just really top shelf. So anyway, let's look at this intro real quick. I want to start by going over how they took power. Between the founding of the party in February 1920 to the rise of its leader, you guys know who the leader was, who gained the office of chancellor in January 1933, this political party never held an elected majority. I've gone over that several times. Most people don't realize that this party was never elected by the majority of the citizens in Germany. I think they won with like a 37% vote, something like that, and therefore had limited power. But those limits began to change after a fire nearly destroyed the Reichstag building in Berlin on February 28, 1933. As news of the incident spread, in other words, what the main takeaway here is this, and you can see pictures of it. This would have been a massive crisis for the entire country. This was almost considered an act of war. Just like today, We are living in a quote unquote crisis, and we are, some might say, at war with an enemy that we can't even see. And I'm talking about the cerveza sickness. But regardless, a crisis is a crisis. And as the Chicago politician said, was it Rahm Emanuel or whatever his name is? Never let a good crisis go to waste, or never let a huge crisis go to waste. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out. We have a huge crisis. Everyone's panicked. The German population doesn't know what to do. They're in a state of fear. Sound familiar? All right, so what did they do? This individual and his party gathered enough parliamentary support to pass the Enabling Act. This was March 24, 1933, which transferred broad law-making powers to this politician and to his political party. It's significant that this was done by a parliamentary vote. By confirming this law with two-thirds majority, the German parliament ended Germany's democracy. They gave this individual and his party the powers needed to create a dictatorship. Within weeks, this individual had dissolved all other political parties to eliminate any opposition, as he assumed the powers of an autocrat. So whenever I'm talking about this, especially what's going on with these government-imposed mandates, and I want to be very clear, I am not we'll call it anti-vax, right? I'm pro-freedom. If you want to do that, you go nuts. I think that's fantastic for you, if that's your decision. But I think every individual should be free to assess the risks, assess the rewards, and make their own decision. Then I think what people have to do is a cost-benefit analysis. Everyone, I don't care whether you're for a vax or against it, whatever, everyone has to do a cost-benefit analysis when they're looking at what the government is currently doing. And I'm talking about the mandates in New York City. The government issued mandates. Now, I'm not talking about a business. Now, I don't like the fact that there are a lot of businesses doing these mandates, but I'm still a free market person, and I try to be principled, or as principled as I possibly can be. So I don't think, and I don't know if there's a way, if it was against the Constitution or something like that, I'm sure I could be persuaded. I want to keep an open mind. But as of right now, I am not against a business. Well, I'm against a business doing it, but I'm not against a business I'm for businesses being able to run their business and hire and fire whomever they want. I'm against government intervention with a business, with an individual's business, whether it's a small business, a mid-sized business. But what a lot of people do is they sit there, and a lot of people that are very, very, let's say, anti-business or unfriendly to business or the free market, they will cheer when Twitter, let's say, bans Zero Hedge. And I know Zero Hedge is back on, but remember, they banned Zero Hedge, and everyone out there, most of the people that I would assume that are in that camp, favor these government mandates. and they definitely favor the mandates from the business. They would claim, well, oh, there you go, you free market guys. It goes both ways. That now we need to give the businesses that they should have the right to, or the business should be able to have the right to serve whomever they want. Okay, I agree. And now they're saying, well, oh, there you free market guys, you can't you can't shout from the mountaintop on this one, because this is just businesses doing what they want. This is the government, not making any rule or law that would force a business to do one thing or the other. And that's true. I agree. I get it. But if you want to be able to give the business the right to hire and fire whomever they want for whatever reason, well, we need to be intellectually consistent. Therefore, you would need to abolish minimum wage. What are we doing? We're allowing businesses to make their own decisions. And if you want to allow a business to make the decision to fire someone if they have not had if they have not injected a foreign substance into their body, then you also need to give that business the right to pay people whatever they want. That's the way it goes. So I think it's important that we make sure that we're not cherry picking and we're staying intellectually consistent there. But what I'm against here, and now again, I don't agree with businesses doing that. In fact, I've got family members that most likely in the next couple of weeks will be fired for their decision here to not get the vax. That makes me sick to my stomach. But again, I don't think government should intervene with businesses. I don't believe that governments should force businesses. And again, too, but let's think this through, because if we're going to do it for mandates, then you got to do it for minimum wage. But if you're going to do it for that, then you also have to allow that religious person, you have to allow them to be able to choose who they want to serve and who they don't want to serve, right? And that would go to a cake maker or a bakery making a wedding cake for a gay couple. You see, you gotta keep it consistent there. But what these people are doing is they're just cherry picking what serves their narrative, right? But anyway, my point is that I am against government intervening, government mandates. It's where they're forcing you to do something. Government coming in and saying we need to create a no-fly list. Government coming in and telling businesses that they are not allowed to serve a certain group of people. That's Jim Crow laws right there. That's where the government came in and told businesses they were not allowed to serve a certain section, a certain group in the population. That's exactly what New York City just did. Exactly. It's identical. So let's keep moving on here, but I want to make that very clear. So the next thing I wanted to discuss is how this group, once they basically, once it became a dictatorship, how did they, remember, even though it's a dictatorship and they have the power to do that, it doesn't necessarily mean that a majority of the people still are drinking their Kool-Aid. Again, they only had 37% of the vote, and that was just a few months after they took this total authoritarian control of the entire country. So it's not like they convinced the other, call it, 63% of the people within 2 months. So how did they do this? Well, the first thing they did, as most of you have heard me say many times, is they discouraged people from using critical thinking. And they encouraged them to prioritize feelings. We see that happening today, don't we? The next thing they did is they took control of the narrative for the mainstream media, entertainment, and schools. So how many of you on this live stream right now have seen that happen in the media? When's the last time that you went and watched a movie, as an example? And my guess is, regardless of what the topic of the movie is, the whole message was cramming home some sort of woke agenda that we hear Klaus and Bigglesworth talk about over and over and over and over again. I was just reading the other day that DC Comics has now made Robin from Batman and Robin. They've made him gay. He's now like dating dudes and stuff. He'll go like beat up a bad guy, and then he'll see some dude that he likes, and they like wink at each other, and then they just go out for dinner that night. Great. I really don't care, to be honest with you. I'm a libertarian. You can do whatever you want. But I think it's so blatantly obvious that this woke narrative that is being jammed down our throats from the global elite is just popping up everywhere. And it has been for the last 5 years, to the point where I can't even go to a movie anymore. It's just, or try watching a basketball game. It's the same. Try watching the Olympics. I mean, it's the same thing. All it is, you want to sit down and watch sports, or you want to watch a movie, you want to watch the Olympics, you want to watch whatever, but instead, the whole entire time, you're just getting this woke agenda jammed down your throat constantly. It never ends. So we definitely see that happening. Well, the third thing they did is they had a boogeyman, right? So we all know who the boogeyman was for the Germans during this time, right? I don't think I need to explain that to anyone on this live stream. So but actually, you know what? Let's do this. Let's dive into that boogeyman a little bit further, because I think this is extremely important. And this article, if I'm not mistaken, discusses it down below. Because this group used familiar institutions to take over government, it may have felt like nothing extraordinary was taking place. In truth, as an example, if I started talking about this just out on the street, 99% of Americans would tell me I'm absolutely crazy, that I've lost my mind. It would have been the exact same thing in Germany during the 1930s. If you were someone that was out there trying to make your voice heard about the risks with this particular individual and his party, it would have been the exact same thing as trying to go around today and tell your friend and family member Fred the risks of giving the government power to force you to inject a foreign substance into your veins or into your body that hasn't even been approved by the FDA. It hasn't even been approved, for heaven's sakes. Now, I get it. The Johnson & Johnson deal, that is a technology that is old. That's great. If you got to get it, that's the one I'd suggest, right? But you look at the efficacy of the Johnson & Johnson vax, and it's what, like 50, 60%? Okay. And what are the long-term consequences? Again, it's this risk reward type thing that everyone needs to do. But so this is coming down from the government. Okay. But if we told the people the risks there, that was really my point, then I'm sure we would get the exact same feedback that that you would have gotten in Germany during the 1930s. And that's that you're crazy, you're a tinfoil hatter, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a fear monger, you don't know what you're talking about. This has happened in the past in Germany. Listen, we've done this before in Germany. We've given power to an individual and they take it. This is no big deal. We've done it just for a crisis situation and then we'll take it back. It's the exact same thing that you hear today with the arguments that, oh, well, don't worry about this mandate. We've had mandates before in the United States. Look at the chicken pox. Right. Number one, completely different. You're talking about something that kills 30% of the people that it infects. Number two, you're talking about a vax that had been around for 100 years. 100 years. And lastly, that assumes that I would have been in favor. Just because we did it in the past doesn't mean that I'm in favor of it. That's crazy talk. That's nonsense. All right. So again, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but you're talking about a completely different set of risks and rewards. Completely different cost-benefit analysis. The last thing that I would add there is that back in the let's call it 1905, I think is when they instituted that law or made that mandate law. Back then, we didn't have something called the World Economic Forum. Today, we do. And I'm not saying that that is an absolute risk, that there's a 100% chance of this or this happening. But I am saying that if you're trying to do a cost-benefit analysis, you have to include that variable into the equation. You have to. So again, what made the probabilities different back in Germany and what made the cost-benefit analysis different is that now you had someone in charge that I don't know if he explicitly came out and said his objectives. I'm sure he did pretty soon, but you've got a different person in charge. You've got a different group, right? You've got to analyze that group, see what or try to figure out what their intentions are. And then you've got to include that in your cost benefit analysis. So moving on here. So this party made use of and encouraged existing, you get it, legal attacks on this boogeyman group started in 1933. But the biggest shift and change was the passage of the Nuremberg laws in 1935. These statutes allowed persecution of this group on two important fronts. One, the boogeyman group was stripped of their citizenship. They did not want blood intermarriage between the two groups, loss of citizenship, came loss of basic rights. Weird. There's a group in the United States right now that is also losing their basic rights. I think you guys know who I'm talking about. Moving on here, wave after wave of laws made things even worse for this group, or this segment of the population. They were even denied employment in certain trades and industries. And many of their businesses were boycotted and forced to close. Access to public education was restricted. The measures took a huge toll on this group. In just a few short years, a once thriving community, some of those families that had lived there for centuries, was reduced to a population living at the complete mercy of this party and their fellow Germans. So on this note, I want to kind of wrap it up by just kind of adding this to your thought process. But in addition to wanting this group out of the country, there was another goal behind this ideology. The Germans portrayed this group as communists. This group's communist association, it wasn't really an association, but this category, let's say, above all, as the greatest danger to the German nation and its people. So you see what they did. Oh, here we go. Let's not forget this part. This individual and his party exploited the fear this generated to convince everyday people to support their terrible policies. So let that sink in a little bit. Do you see any similarities with what is happening today? So I've gone, and you guys have followed kind of the intellectual journey here. You know, back when I was, a few months ago in Florida, you know, I was trying to think through, okay, obviously they're doing the lack of critical thinking. They're pushing that. I'll talk about the global elite. They're also, you know, media entertainment schools, check. But if you remember, I was like, well, but I don't know what their boogeyman is. I mean, it could be several people. It could be white straight males. It could be Christians. It could be you know, people who love freedom. They could be considered domestic terrorists. Right? I didn't know. I'm like, that's the weird thing, is they haven't really pinpointed a specific boogeyman. But now I'm beginning to think, especially when you look at the news, you look at the newspaper, everywhere you go, they are jamming this down your throat. And by this, I mean the mandate for the vax. So, I hope I am so wrong. There's nothing more. There's nothing would make me happier than to be wrong. But I've got a bad feeling that that the boogeyman that they set up may be the unvaccinated, the unvaxxed, the anti-vaxxers, if you will. I mean, if you read the way that, in the language they used in Germany in 1930, I mean, it is almost identical to the language that the media is using right now, and the global elite, the Joe Biden, the politicians, all of them. And so I also want to point out, to kind of tie this all together, that the political figures we have today, I don't want to call them leaders because they're the antithesis of a leader, but the Trudeaus, the Bidens, and I'm not just picking on that party. You guys know that I am, I dislike both parties equally, but those are the two that really stand out to me. Why? Because it is so obvious that they are puppets of Klaus and the World Economic Forum. I mean, it is just glaringly obvious. It's right there. I just, when I read their quotes and what they say, it just, you just want to grab people and shake them and say, wake up, wake up. I mean, I tweeted it out earlier. I don't know if I can, I don't know if I can pull up my Twitter feed here. Let me try to do that really quick. Actually, let me do that before I screen share to make sure that I can do it. Yeah, I can. Great. Okay, so let's do the screen share, guys, because this is really important. This is what ties it all in, kind of connects the dots. Yeah, and I want to be very, again, I want to be very clear. I am not anti-vax. I am absolutely, unequivocally not. I think if that's your decision after doing a risk reward, fantastic. I don't think any less of you whatsoever. That's your decision. You made it. And I think it's great that you feel comfortable making that decision and you sleep better at night. That hats off to you. I'm not anti-vax. I'm anti-government vax mandates. I want to make sure I'm very, very clear there. So anyway, let's move on to my Twitter feed here. So here we go. We've got Trudeau. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but this is just right there on YouTube. You can hear him. And what drives me crazy about these things as well is when you listen to these people speak, you know, their YouTube videos, and you, or with Klaus or the IMF or anyone like that, or Lagarde or Biden. I don't know if Biden's as bad as Trudeau, but if you watch this video, and you can see it, if you just put this into the YouTube search engine, it will pull right up. But it's so obvious they're reading, like you can see his eyes just reading right off the page. I mean, right off the teleprompter or whatever. I mean, dude, it's like, how insulting is that to every single Canadian citizen or every single person that's watching? That you know these aren't his thoughts. He's just reading it off the damn page. It's a script that was written for him. Well, who's writing this script? Who's giving him his talking points? Well, I think what you should first do is try to listen to the verbiage that he is using. And in this clip, and I can't play it because this is a screenshot, but again, you can go right to YouTube. It's right there. Trudeau says that they need to use the cerveza sickness as an opportunity for a reset. Well, who else says that? Who else has been saying that? I don't know. Here's a quote from Klaus. The pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world. Do you think it's just a coincidence that Trudeau is regurgitating the exact same line, word for word, from Klaus? I mean, let's keep moving here. Biden on the campaign trail, non-stop, was talking about a new economic plan where we need to get rid of shareholder capitalism and move towards what? Stakeholder capitalism. We need stakeholder capitalism, stakeholder capitalism, stakeholder capitalism. Well, where did Biden get this? Is that Biden's talking point? No. Whose talking point is that? Klaus, the World Economic Forum, and the Davos corporate plan. That, hello, how do people not see this? Our political leaders are puppets. That's all they are. They're useful idiots. The global elite are pulling the strings. So, going back to the main point of this video, I wanted to point out that these global elite that are pulling the strings are using the exact same tactics that they used in Germany. Now, I'm not saying that they're part of the same group or they're affiliated, or I'm not even saying they're doing it intentionally. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's assume that they're not even aware of what they're doing. Whether it's inadvertently or whether it's intentional, the result is still the same. They're using the identical tactics. Period. End of story. That's what we know definitively. And we also know definitively that they're Marxists and they're central planners. And by definition, if you favor central planning, you believe that some people are smarter and should rule over the majority. By definition, if you favor central planning. And I don't think it's going out on I don't think it's a stretch to assume that there were individuals in Germany during 1930s that thought there was a small group or a percentage of the population that was superior to everyone else. I think I remember something like that, don't you? So one more thing I want to add before I let you go for the afternoon. Is the economic system in Germany was something called fascism. And it was a form of fascism, but it really revolved around something called corporatism, where they had private property rights. So the individuals in the real economy actually owned the means of production. But this political party really had a, let's say, massive amount of influence on those people that owned the corporations. Here's a quote from the individual that we're referring to. The state should retain supervision, and each property owner should consider himself appointed by the state. It is his duty not to use his property against the interest of others among his own people. This is a crucial matter, and the Third Reich will always retain its rights to control, let's say influence, the owners of the property. Well, you guys, most of you, I'm sure, were on my live stream yesterday, where I went right to the World Economic Forum's website, and there's a list of their corporate partners. And you go down that list, and sure enough, all the woke corporations like Salesforce and Facebook and Google, they're all right there as partners of the World Economic Forum. And by the way, just like Biden and just like Trudeau, they not only have the same beliefs, but they use the exact same verbiage. Like listen to Zuckerberg, listen to Benioff. It's stakeholder capitalism. It's inclusion. It's equality. I mean, again, it's just like the politicians. Who do you think is pulling the strings here? And I'm not going to go so far as to say control, but I will go as far as to say influence heavily. Another thing that I thought you would find fascinating is part of the kind of their economic game plan to achieve more control over the individuals in the private sector. So here we go. Hopefully you're buckled up for this one. You've poured yourself that stiff drink. To maintain high employment and minimize popular discontent, fascist governments also undertook massive public works projects financed by steep taxes, borrowing, and fiat money creation. Weird. Does that sound familiar? So I think the takeaway here, obviously, as always, is use critical thinking. This is just me kind of spitballing it and sharing with you my thought process. It doesn't mean that I'm right. It doesn't mean that I'm wrong, but it means that you need to think through these things on your own and do your own research and come to your own conclusions. But have that intellectual curiosity. And I would add, I think now is the time where you need to start adding urgency into your analysis, into your life, maybe, because I look at how quickly things are happening. I mean, just in the last 2 weeks. And by the way, I didn't even show you guys. Let me do this before I take off. This will really blow you away. As far as talking about things happening quickly. Here we go. This is a bill that has not passed, but was, I don't know how the process works, but it was introduced, let's say, I believe August 6th. And this is to direct security of Homeland Security to ensure that an individual traveling on a flight that departs from or arrives to an airport inside the United States or a territory of the United States is fully vaccinated against the cerveza sickness. And I love this last part. And for other purposes. Doesn't say what those other purposes are. So this is basically a no-fly list. And again, I want to be very clear, this has not passed yet. Hopefully it won't. But this is just an example of how quickly things are moving, and therefore why I feel it's important that you have a sense of urgency when you're trying to figure out what the hell is actually going on here. The last thing I'll leave you with is a reminder that for Rebel Capitalists Live to discuss topics like we're discussing right now with other like-minded individuals and a lot of the speakers that I have on the Rebel Capitalist show, a lot of your favorites, the early bird special, I think is what they're calling it, ends tomorrow. So if you want to take advantage of that, make sure you go to rebelcapitalistlive.com. And we're going to be talking a lot about freedom, guys. We're going to be talking about economics. We're going to be talking about gold, Bitcoin, real estate, commodities. We're going to talk about building wealth and thriving. But we are going to be talking a lot about how to protect your freedom. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have freedom, you got nothing. So our headline speaker there is Dr. Ron Paul. Along with Dr. Paul, I've got G. Edward Griffin. And then we've got all your other favorites from Finn Twitt, Lynn Alden, Luke Groman, Lynette Zhang, Mark Moss. I can't remember all the people, but if you go there, you'll see. And there's going to be some more speakers that I'll be incorporating at a later date. But again, guys, we're going to go there and we're going to figure out how to build wealth and thrive, but we're also going to figure out how to protect our freedom. So that's why I'd encourage each one of you to go. All right, let's do some shout outs here. Bold, well, let me go to the bottom. Okay, we got None of Your Bees, Wax, Gray Fox, Mice, Elf, Kimba, the White Lion, 7-7, Alice Scholl, All Nighter Hider, Mayo Rodriguez, Alan Zibelman, Captain X, Joel, Mark Wana Song, Mark Tur, Casper HXR, Pork Barrel Investing, Anna Yankova, Graham B, the Fox Wolf, Stella Q, All Nighter Haida in the house, Jane, Chody Doinks. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I will most likely be back on another video later on where I've got some stuff lined up that's actually very good news that I want to share with you. That's going to be the next video, I promise. It's going to be going over some great news that all of us should be excited about. So I'm going to go grab some lunch, and I'll see you here on the next video.